I caught my wife cheating with a neighbor, so I went scorched earth and got a divorce and made her cry in court. So my wife, called her Morgan, cheated on me with a friend of mine. Call him Jay for the story's sake. A bit of backstory. When we met, I was 22 at another friend's wedding. She was a good friend of the bride and I, the groom, and they sat us at that table so we would get together. When I first seen her, I was completely taken aback by how beautiful she was, and when she sat down and we began to talk, we found out we had a lot of things in common. We clicked instantly. We talked for a while, ate the dinner, and took to the dance floor. We danced and drank through the night. We ended up kissing in the middle of the dance floor, and when we pulled away, our friends, the bride and groom, came out to us and asked what was up between us. They were really excited to play a matchmaker. We just shrugged it off and carried on with our night. We left not exchanging numbers, but about a week later, I got a text from her asking me out. Bride gave her my number. I, of course, said yes, and it turned into a relationship. The relationship was great other than small arguments. We never really fought, and it was never anything really serious. I eventually asked her to marry me about 2 years into us dating, and we were married less than a year later. We were married for a little more than a year when it all came crashing down on me. Just before our first anniversary, there were little things that were irritating me. She became more guarded with her phone. Girls' nights became more frequent, and our sex life was almost non-existent. I had brought this up on multiple occasions but was brushed off, and that I am letting my insecurities get to me. She would continue to go on as if what I felt and tried to communicate didn't matter to her, so I became colder and colder. I stopped giving her a goodbye kiss as I leave her work, and unless it was something important, we hardly spoke. One night while she slept, I took her phone and laptop and skimmed through her texts, emails, and messenger apps and found nothing. And from reading the stories on here, I checked her car. I grabbed her keys and looked in her car and found a second phone. I knew in that instant what was going on, but I wanted all the evidence for when I call her out. I didn't want her to say something like it had only happened once or anything stupid like that. I looked through the phone and found only one number. I read through every message, and I connected the phone to my computer and printed out every message and every photo and spent the night researching divorce lawyers. I spent hours of my day in my at-home office reading bios of lawyers and found one that I liked and emailed him, but as it was Saturday, he wasn't in the office. I then wanted to know who the guy was, so I grabbed my phone, typed the number I wanted to call, and pretend I'm Spectrum because who doesn't have Spectrum, but Jay's contact popped up. That took me a minute to put 2 and 2 together, but when I did, I blew up. I was yelling and cursing in my office, and my wife opened the door to check on me, but when I see her, I told her to give the F out. She closed the door and went to her room. I had never cursed in my wife or raised my voice above a normal volume. All of my day, I never left my office. I was just silently raging, just glaring at the wall. I called one of my friends, groomed from the wedding, and told him I need to go for a drink and asked if he'll come with me. He must have heard something in my voice because he asked if I was okay. I told him I wasn't and I really needed to drink, so without word, I took all the prawn outs and left to go to the bar. I arrived first, ordered 4 shots of Jack and a beer. I was on my last shot when my friend, Colin T., arrived and asked what's going on. I told him straight out, Morgan's cheating. He gave me sympathy, and I asked if he wanted to know with who and told him it was Jay. He became visibly irritated. He was the one that introduced me to Jay, and all he could say was, "I'm sorry," over and over. Jay and I were never super close. We wouldn't ask one another to hang out, but if we see each other at a get-together, we were friendly. I told T don't mention this to anyone, as I had just found out and I haven't even spoken to Amara lawyer yet. I asked him not to tell his wife, and if she asked what was wrong with me to say, "I'm having problems at work," and he agreed. Every drink and talk for most of the night, then I called an Uber and went home. Around 3 a.m., it was the first time I looked at my phone since I called T, and there was a missed call, a bunch of texts all from Morgan asking where I was, when I'd be home, and if I was okay. I got home, and she was asleep on the couch. I just walked up to our bedroom and went asleep. I woke up with her in the bed, so I got dressed and left the house. I went to go pick up my car and go to my office and buried myself and work for the day and went back home around 10 p.m. To my surprise, my wife was there to greet me, and she told me she had made me dinner. She asked if I wanted her to heat it up. I told her no and went to bed. She followed soon after asking what's been wrong with me. I told her to leave me alone and I wanted to sleep. She kept pastoring me. Eventually, I snapped and yelled at Morgans to stop. I'm trying to sleep and go away. The next morning, I received an email from the lawyer asking to meet later in the day, and I confirmed and got ready for my day. I went downstairs to leave and Morgan had made breakfast asking to talk. I made a small plate and sat down. She started by saying I've been acting different and going on and on about how I changed and she wants to know why. I told her work has been stressful and soon it would be all over. I finished up until I've got to go. I went to my office and counted down the minutes to go meet the lawyer. When I left, I told my assistant I'm going out to lunch with a client. My wife would call my work sometimes and left. The meeting with the lawyer went well, and I handed over all I had gathered on her, and the lawyer had told me, well, I'm sorry for all that's going on, but I'm happy you gathered all this information. You see, we live in an at-fault state, so your wife has no claim on most of your money. I told him I didn't even think about that. I was just thinking I've got to divorce her as soon as possible. He asked to keep the evidence, but I told him I'd prefer you to just make copies as I haven't told my wife. I knew yet. I don't want to hear her excuses. He agreed and had his assistant make copies. I asked when she will be served with the papers. He told me about 2 weeks. I thanked him and left. I went home to confront my wife when I arrived. She wasn't home, so I called her. No answer. Called again. No answer. I texted her. I don't give AF if you're writing Jay right now. Get home, we need to talk. Though, behold, she calls me not a minute later asking what I was talking about. All I told her was get home now. She arrives about 15 minutes later and I said to her, wow, look at that. 15 minutes, that's about the same distance between here and Jay's, isn't it? She looked at me dumbfounded. I gave her a minute to gather herself, but she was just looking at me and I said, well, nothing to say. She tried to gaslight me, and I let her continue on. She worked herself up and started to insult me. I slammed my fist on the table to shut her up and pulled out the evidence at first and showed it from the side and said, look at this mountain of things I gather on you. Then I showed her each printout at a time. She then tells me to stop and started to cry. She tried to apologize and tells me she loved me. I said, honey, what happened to that energy you had before? You were so adamant, undegrading, and insulting me just a minute ago. She tried to hug me and tell me how sorry she is. I put my hand out and told her don't touch me. She says we'll go to the bedroom and do whatever I like. I looked her deep in the eyes and told her, sweetheart, I will never touch you again. Do you want to know who else has these photos and messages? My lawyer. I'm divorcing you. Now get a bag, gather your clothes, and get the F out of my house. That was 3 days ago, and I haven't heard from her. I'm sorry about how long this is and if there are any spelling errors. I'm curious to those that have been where I'm at. What can I expect from here? Thank you for reading. Do you want some opinions? Ray Fluminous has one.
Endre.
You handled that like a champion. Now, first and foremost, take her off any and all financials to protect yourself and change passwords on everything. Next, get an STD test and don't for the love of everything holy do anything in a state of anger. Meaning as much as you might feel like hurting her or Jay, don't. Listen to your lawyer's advice and ask him if you can change the locks on the house as she has effectively abandoned the marital home. Don't drink or do drugs and prepare for the inevitable. Stop being the begging, gaslighting, and blame shifting that will come. She might also try to paint you as the villain in this story to justify her betrayal, so tell everyone what she's done and why you're divorcing her. That includes parents, friends, and if Jay has a girlfriend or spouse, then especially her. Channel your anger and rage into some form of exercise. It will help you calm down and tire you out to help you sleep, which will become harder as the reality of the situation sinks in. Good luck and keep us posted. You'll see your opinion on the show. I'll stick to that. Lawyer told me all communication between her and I should go through him, so hopefully I won't be talking to her at all. Jay does have a fiancée, and I will be telling her. Enforcement X wants to add, how do you plan on contacting Jay's fiancée? I'm sure he knows that you know, and will likely be on the lookout for anything in the mail, or are you showing up at the house, etc. Hopefully he doesn't have access to monitor her email or socials. The OP replies, I've met her a few times, I have her number, and I will try to contact her until she answers, and if she doesn't, I'll go to their house when he's at work. I'll put a note in her car to contact me. I won't let that POS get away scot-free. Tailbone77, adds to the conversation. Good on you, man. Swift and decisive action. So sorry that you got caught up with another fake piece of crap out there, but you will come out on top in the end. They always can explain. Yeah, expect the begging and crying to continue when she gets the divorce papers. It didn't mean anything. I don't love him. Another BS. Exposure to all near and far after. Stay strong, buddy. Update 1. Let me first thank all who commented or messaged me. I truly appreciate the praise and advice you all have given. I've tried to keep up with the comments, so if I didn't answer yours, I'm sorry. I hope I answer more of the common questions you all have asked in this update. If you haven't read the first part, go to my page. It's still there. After I posted the first part of this, you all have given me a ton of advice, so I followed most of it. This morning I planned on doing a lot of damage control in my life, so I scheduled an appointment with my doctor to get checked for STDs, and I have that appointment in 2 days. Next, I started contacting all the people close to me, my father and a few friends. They have all been really supportive, offering their own advice and asking if I need help with anything, but as I got this crap on lock, I declined. I then started to contact her family. I sent a text to her mom and dad thanking them for allowing me into their family, and then I was grateful for all they had done for me. But Morgan and I are getting divorced and that I would miss them terribly. Not really. They were very suffocating, and while they were great people, I'm happy I no longer have to deal with it. Everyone told them if they had any questions, feel free to ask. I didn't hear back from them for a while, so I moved on to Morgan's sister. This kind of hurt because her sister and I were good friends, and I knew this would mess up that friendship. I texted her, "Hey, I'm sorry to have to text you this, but Morgan and I are going to get divorced, and I wanted you to know. I want to thank you. From day one you accepted me as a brother. I will be around if you ever need anything from me." Around the time I sent that text, her parents responded back. I'll type up how that conversation went. Parents, we are so sorry to hear this. What happened? Why hasn't Morgan said anything to us? Morgan has been in at least a year-long affair. I suspect it started before our wedding. I'm unsure why she hasn't reached out, but I think you should call her. She left the house. I figured she would have gone to you. No, we haven't heard from her. We'll call her. Thanks for letting us know. Are you sure she was having an affair? I am positive. I found their texts. We're so sorry that she did that. We'll try and get in touch with her. After dealing with her family, I moved on to Jay's fiancé. I can't remember if I told you all he was engaged in the first part. I know it was brought up in some of the comments. I thought this was going to be difficult, that Morgan and Jay would have conspired some master plan, but either Morgan didn't tell him I found out, or they're just idiots. I sent her a text around 2 p.m. and asked if we could meet for a coffee or something. By 205, she agreed and told me to meet her at some gross hipster coffee shop across from her work at 230. I arrived first, ordered my horrible coffee, and waited for a few minutes. She walked in, ordered hers, and came and joined me. I told her, there's no easy way to say what I'm about to tell you, so I'm just going to blur it out. Jay has been cheating on you with my wife. It's been going on for more than a year. She was obviously shocked, so I then told her, I only found out a few days ago. I know I should have told you then, but I had a divorce to get started and my own pity to deal with. She asked how I found out. I told her everything that's in the first post. I then asked if she wanted to see the evidence I gathered and pull out a binder. She grabbed the binder and skimmed through the messages and pictures and just started to silently cry. I told her she's more than welcome to take the binder, extra copies, if she wanted to confront Jay with it or use it to see if he would lie. She thanked me, stood up, took the binder, and I told her if she needs anything from me to let me know. She nodded her head and walked out, looking very defeated. I know you all had told me to just stay sober, keep a level head, and whatnot, but my world just came crashing down on my head. I'm going to take this week to sit on my back porch, drink, smoke cigars, and blare music. After this week, I'll stop feeling sorry for myself, get back to my usual schedule. On a more positive note, I already packed up most of her things, clothes, jewelry, etc. I also threw in our wedding book and every photo that has her in it, in the boxes. If and when she comes back for her stuff, I don't want her here any longer than she needs to be. Also, before you ask, no, I didn't ruin her clothes other than a few picture frames. Nothing's broken. As of right now, there's nothing else happening. I told everyone I needed to tell. My doctor's appointment is scheduled. My lawyer's hard at work to get me out of this nonsense, and 90% of her things are in boxes. I really don't know what's left. If she stays out of my hair, this might be the smoothest divorce ever. Thank you for reading. Advice is always appreciated. Update 2. Hey everyone. I'm sorry I've been MIA for a while and didn't respond to comments and messages, but I think I've caught up and now for the update. So since the update, I've been enjoying my pity party drinking, and more drinking. I'd say this is my first semi-sober moment since I found out about everything and can't really put into words how I feel. I guess the number is an accurate word. In the last update, I told you all I notified everyone, and the only one that didn't respond was Emma's sister, who I was very close to. Well, that night I wrote the update. I had continued my drinking binge after I posted and passed out on the back patio. With a little bottle and a few beer cans surrounding me, I woke up in the smell of breakfast being cooked. My first thought was, oh Christ, Emma came back and thinks the breakfast was going to make up for what she's done. I worked myself up into a rage and threw myself out of the chair, ready for a screaming match, but to my surprise, it was Emma's sister, called her W. I stood there for a moment, trying to calm myself back down, but when Emma, seen I was awake, she sprinted to me and wrapped her arms around me. She didn't say anything to me. She just took my hand and laid me to the table and put a plate in front of me. As I ate, she told me how sorry she was and that when her sister showed up to her house and just said that we were having problems and it would be fine in a few days, then told me that when I texted her that we were divorcing, she asked Emma if it would be fine. Why is he divorcing you? Apparently, Emma just broke down and told Emma everything. I scoffed and said there's no way she told you everything and proceeded to tell her all that happened. W told me that Emma had said it was a one-time thing and that I was blowing it out of proportion. I told W that I have no intention of getting back together with Emma, and if that is why she's here, she's wasting her time, and if she's in contact with Emma, W needs to tell her to find a lawyer. She laughed and said she wasn't here for her sister. She was here for me. She told me that of course she'd be there for my sister, but that her and I are friends, and she wouldn't abandon me, especially when I didn't do anything wrong. I stood up and went to her side of the table and just hugged her. I was so worried that all this BS that's going on would ruin her and my friendship, and hearing her say that made me feel so much better. W stayed with me for 2 days, guest bedroom. You, her heathens, and left this morning as I am preparing to leave for my cabin. I had it before the marriage and I can't touch it. I was gathering my hunting and fishing equipment. She asked if she could join me, but it told her as much as I would like that she should probably go check in on her sister. She agreed, hugged me, and left. I'm truly grateful to W for being there for me, and before any of you say she's into me, she's not. She's also 20 and it's way too young for me. It's just a really great friendship. I almost forgot to say I went to the doctor's, got tested, and the results should be in on Monday. I've reached out to Jay's fiancée a few times just to check on her. She tells me she's fine and she doesn't know what to do. I told her if she wants to meet anytime next week, or so she could vent. I'm more than happy to listen. I'll be on here for a little bit, so if you have questions or advice, feel free to comment or message me, but I'll be leaving for the weekend. There's no internet out there, so I won't be around this weekend. I also want to say thank you all so much for reading, reaching out, and all the praise you've given. You all have been a light in a truly dark time in my life. To any of you who are going through this as I am, the only thing I can say is to keep your head down. Focus on what you really want, if it's divorce or if you reconcile. Set your goals one at a time. In my case, lawyer then doctor and notifying everyone close. Keep it off the internet. Also set aside time to get your feelings out. Thank you again, and sorry these updates are always too long. Let's see some more community reactions. Tailbone77 says, I will say it again. I am so extremely effing proud of you for the way that you are handling this crap. Dom and Morgan is still delusional AF. Lovable crap with her. It would be fine in a few days. Yeah, but choose your Wednesday. She'll know exactly how fine it will be. W is a real one, and I know your friendship will endure for a very long time. Go and get some much-needed R&R now, and let the chips fall where they may. F you, Morgan. P.S. The longer the update, the better. Update 3. Hello all. It's been a minute, but I thought I'd update on all the new happenings. If this is the first time you're seeing these posts, you can go to my page and see my other posts. You'll definitely need context. In my last post, I told you all about W coming to my house and staying for a few days, and she left when I was leaving to go hunting at my cabin. Good news, I got a buck, a nice ape winner. I got him on my first day out there, which I am very happy about, as it left me the rest of my time to go fishing. I only caught 2, but they were decent size, so I made one my dinner and butchered the other. I spent the rest of my day at the cabin, cleaning my deer and enjoying the views of nature. Other than a drink or 2 a day I spent my trip sober, as I promised my drinking was only for last week. Now on to the last 2 days. I got a call from my doctor and I'm all clean. It's not such a shock as Morgan, and I haven't had much passionate nights in a few months, but all the same you can never be too sure. I reached out to Jay's fiancée, but didn't hear back for some time. She eventually responded back, telling me she's staying with her family right now. She didn't really go into detail much, but her staying with her family, you can only assume as I do that. That means it's not going well. At least she's with family safe, and with all the support that she could need. I told her if there's anything I can do, all she has to do is reach out. She asked me to meet and get coffee the following day, which I of course agreed to. The following day, we met at the same gross hipster coffee shop and talked for about 2 hours. We talked about everything that happened with Morgan Mon, and she wanted to know what steps I was taking. If I was divorcing, or if there was any chance, I would reconcile. I told her after someone cheats in my book, that's it, that the amount of selflessness and disrespect it takes to cheat, let alone for a year. She obviously didn't care for me. I asked her what her plan was. She told me she's confused about everything, that everything she thought was truth turned out to be lies. She wasn't sure what her next move should be, if she should move on or if she should not forgive him. I told her if you could forgive someone for cheating on you for that amount of time, she's a better person than me. She told me all of her family was telling her that she should forgive him and go on to get married. I told her I was going to be blunt with her and went on to say, just because it's what your family wants doesn't mean you need to follow along. Then said Jay obviously doesn't care about marriage and what it all means. He cheated on you. The fiancé with my wife, if that doesn't show you, he's not marriage material. I told her she needed to do what she thought was right and not to have anyone other than herself make the decision that would affect her life. I told her when I found out all I could do was think of a way my heart could trick my brain into thinking of some way I can accept it and forgive her. But I just couldn't do it. I also said I only talked to one person, but I had already made my decision and no one could change my mind. I bet when you went to stay with your family you had a pretty good idea of what you were going to do, but you let too many people in and they all gave you their own take on it. I finished by telling her all she needed to do was to follow her gut, that her brain and heart will always lie to her. But if her gut feels something's off 9 times out of 10, her gut's probably right. She soon after thanked me, and we left each other and went home. The following day, I got a message from my lawyer that Morgan had successfully been served at work. I thanked him for all his work, especially in the time frame he's gotten it done. Not long after that, W called and told me Morgan hasn't left her room all day, and she's sobbing in bed. I told her she was served and is probably realizing how bad she messed up. W asked me how the cabin was, and if I got anything. I told her everything I did and how my time was there. We talked for a moment and hung up. After I prepared myself and my house for my wife's explosion, I figured if there was any time she would be soon, now that she's been served. So now I'm walking patiently, biding my time. I have Advil on standby for what I can only assume is going to be a bad ache. I told my friend, and he agreed if Morgan showed up he would race over to be a witness, just in case all else fails. I'm currently waiting for her Hurricane Morgan to tear through my house. If or when she does, I'll send out another update. Thank you all for reading. Let's see what the community has to say real quick. 33 years of chump says get some security cameras. Start contacting lawyers. Freeze your credit. Move half the money where she can't access it. Secure your documents. Take photos of everything if you suspect you will damage your property. The OP replies, cameras have been up inside and outside the house since we moved in. Lawyer said there's nothing he or I can do as it's also her house. I also can't pull any money out of our shared account until the divorce is finalized, but I don't have to add any anymore. Update 4. Hello again, everyone. I know I posted only 2 days ago, but I have some news. I wasn't on here after I posted, but some wild crap has happened and couldn't find the time until now to get to the comments of my last post, so I'm sorry I haven't read through them. quick run-through from the top of everything that's happened so far. Then I move on to the update for all those who are seeing my post for the first time. My wife is doing the typical signs your partner is having an affair, so I snooped and found a second phone in her car. I immediately started looking for a lawyer, got one and started the legal process. Confronted my wife, and after a fight, verbal, she packed a bag and left. I then contacted all those who were close to us, my friends, my father, and her family. Then I contacted her affair-varnished fiancé and told her all that I knew and can prove. She then was served at work 2 days ago at her job, and now you're up to date. About an hour or so after I posted last, I was waiting for Morgan to show up at the house and go ballistic. I had no real reason she would do anything, but given everything that's happened, I never really knew the woman. I went around to all the cameras I had up and made sure they were working properly, both the ones inside and outside. I called my friend letting him know that Morgan was served today, and if she shows up, he needs to get to my house as soon as he could. I'm not going to jail because of this woman. Turns out I was right because Morgan had shown up to the house banging on the door screaming to let her in. I immediately called my friend and W to get there because Morgan is beating down my door. She was cursing my name and begging me to let her in, calling me every name in the book and how I could be so heartless. She's not wrong because the entire time she was screaming and banging on the door, all I could do was laugh. I then wondered why she didn't just walk in. She still had keys, at least to my knowledge. When my friend showed up, she was still screaming and cursing, so he started to record on his phone and stayed in his truck. But this idiot brought his wife with him, Morgan's friend, so she got out and tried to calm her down. She walked up to Morgan, putting her arms around her, and tried to get her to talk to her. Morgan then slapped her across the face, screaming at her to mind her own business. That made my friend, who now has a video of it, to call the police. She continued to scream and curse until the police got there. When they did, she tried so hard to play the victim. One of the 2 officers walked up to her, and she started to cry and tell them I hit her and threw her out of the house. My friend and his wife had told the other officer that when they came to the house, she was yelling and banging on the door, so they couldn't confirm that it didn't do what Morgan said I had done. After that officer was done talking with my friend and his wife, he came to my door, and when I opened it, Morgan said, "There, that's him. He hit me. I want him arrested." She started to put me in cuffs when I told him I can prove that she's lying to you. All I need is my phone. The officer stopped and told me to show him the view from the outside cameras. After reviewing the video, he apologized for jumping to conclusions and automatically assuming I was the one in the wrong. I told him I didn't fault him, but he then told me that they received 15 calls total from my neighbors, and apparently during Morgan's rant she had screamed out, "He hit me." See, the officers had already made their judgment. After having to deal with the police for about half an hour, Morgan ended up being put in cuffs and charged with disturbing the peace. The communication ended to UI. As the police took Morgan to the car, W showed up and came to me asking what had happened. I showed up the video on my phone of it all. The officer then came up to me to hand me the case number and some other paperwork. W started to ask questions about the charges, so I just went back inside. W followed soon after and sat next to me. She told me she left her house for 10 minutes to run to the store, but when she got back, Morgan was no longer in the living room. So she thought Morgan had gone to bed after she drank too much wine. W and I talked for a while, and she asked me if she could stay the night. I said she was welcome anytime. She told me that Morgan had to spend the night in jail. I don't know why, but they could bail her out in the morning. She told me that when I went back inside, she called her parents to let them know what was happening, and to see if they could bail Morgan out because W doesn't have that kind of money. We had a beer together and soon went to bed. When I woke up in the morning, W had already left to meet with her parents. I haven't heard from Morgan, W, or their parents, but I don't think it's a fun conversation. Update 5. Hello all. It's been a little over a week since I've posted, and I have some small news. If you didn't see my last update, that's because it was taken down. I don't know why, but I'll give you a rundown of all that happened. I'll try and keep it short and sweet, and move on to the update. So before my wife was served, I had told a friend it was happening, and told him to be on standby just in case she came over. I wanted him there as a witness. Later in the day, my lawyer told me she was served at work, and a few hours later my wife was banging on my door. I called my friend as soon as I heard her. I also called W and told her she should come over because her sister was beating on my door. Soon after I got off the phone, my friend arrived and started recording my wife's tirade from his truck. He had brought his wife for some reason, and she got out to try and calm my wife down. She ran up to her and tried to pull her away, but my wife turned around and smacked her, telling her to stay out of her business. When my wife hit his, he stopped recording and called the police. It took about maybe 10 minutes for them to get there, and when they did, my wife flipped a switch and started saying I abused her. When I stepped outside to talk to the cops, he immediately started to put me into cuffs until I told him I have cameras that show she's lying. He stopped and allowed me to pull out my phone, and he watched the entire video showing all that she said was just one big lie. She started going off again, and the cop arrested her and had her take a breathalyzer. As they took her to their car, W pulled up asking what was happening. She came and stood next to me, and when the cop brought the paperwork in to apologize to me for jumping to conclusions, I just told him I understand, it's no big deal, then went inside. W stayed behind to get the full story from him, and soon after joined me. She asked to stay over because and will have to stay overnight in jail. When I woke up, W was already gone, and that pretty much sums up my last update. I haven't heard from Morgan since that night, but my lawyer was contacted by hers, letting him know he'll be representing Morgan. Finally, we can start this process. I also reached out to Jay's fiancée to see if she has any news on her front. We only texted back and forth, but she told me she has kicked him out of her house and had her father and brother pack up all his things and drop it off at his house. She told me her dad and brother wanted to beat him, but she asked them not to, and that she just wants to put all this behind her, move on. She thanked me for checking on her and tells me her close friends are there for her when she needs them. I sent her the link to my Reddit page so she can see all the support you all give to me and her. On Friday, the moment I got off work, I raced home, and my plan was to go back to my cabin for the weekend. When I arrived, W was in my driveway. She wanted to grab her sister's things and had a list of what my wife expected. I skimmed through it, and all but one thing was already in a box or sitting in my garage waiting we picked up. I told her I'm not transporting or touching anything that's in here. I'm not going to be responsible if Morgan wants to claim I destroyed her stuff. I told her I'd pay for a moving company to come and pack and take all her things for her because right now I'm going to my cabin and don't have the time to deal with Morgan's crap. She said that would be great and hopes I have fun. She took a box of Morgan's clothes and put it in her car. She then turned to me and asked if she could tag along this time. I said sure, why don't you go back home and drop off the box and pack a bag for herself? By the time I went to the store and packed up the truck she was pulling up, I locked up my house and took off to the cabin with W. The weekend went really well. The last time I was up there, I realized what a gem this place is. It has a beautiful view and is completely secluded, so don't have to deal with any people. It's a place you can truly breathe in and relax. On Monday, I called the moving company, and by today, Tuesday, 3 guys in a big truck pulled up and started loading. I had every box open and recorded as they closed the box and picked it up. I took pictures of all the furniture and recorded as the movers loaded it. I thanked them for tolerating me and tipped them each an extra $50. I then sent all the recordings and pictures to my lawyer and carried on with my day. The house seems empty but also clean without all her things here. When I started the process, my lawyer told me not to get rid of anything that could be considered shared, so I put most of the furniture in a storage unit. I've been sleeping in the guest room since she left, so up until I started writing this post, I've been buying all new furniture. I'll most likely be keeping the majority of it in the garage now that I have the space. I won't be keeping the house even if I win in the divorce. It holds too many now bad memories. Thanks for reading. Update 6. Hey Reddit, it's been a while since I've posted. I coach high school baseball. So between getting the divorce done, dealing with my soon-to-be ex, and coaching these kids, I don't have much free time at the moment. Quite a bit has happened, so this might be a long post, so please bear with me. Since it's been a little over a month since I've posted, I'll give a small rundown of what all had happened in my last post in case you've forgotten. If this is the first time seeing my post, or if you need to go back and reread something, it's all on my profile still. So we left off with Morgan being arrested after striking my friend's wife and telling the police I assaulted her. And after showing them the video of all that happened, I was let go and she was taken to jail on a variety of charges. I didn't hear from Morgan for a while until her lawyer reached out to mine, letting him know that he'd be representing Morgan and doing the lawyer-to-lawyer formalities. I reached out to Jay's fiancée asking what was happening and found out she had kicked him out and her brother and father took all his things to Jay's new place. I planned on going to my cabin after work, but found W in my driveway waiting for me. She needed to pick up some things for her sister. After telling her I wouldn't be touching any of her things, I told her I would pay for a moving company the following week. W asked if she could come up to my cabin with me that time, and I agreed, mostly due to everyone telling me she might be needing a break from her sister. And the last time she asked me, I said no. I documented everything with the movers, making sure she couldn't claim I broke something she deems as special, and sent everything to my lawyer. That's pretty much all that had happened in the last post. And now the update. A few days after the movers took her things to Morgan, my lawyer received some paperwork saying I damaged her things and demanding I pay her $1,500 or she would be taking me to court over it. My lawyer sent hers all the videos and pictures asking exactly where the damages were that he claimed I made. He told me all this does is tell the judge, we'll get how unhinged she is. And it might be a headache now, but when it's time for court this will all be perfect evidence. I don't think her lawyer was ready for how meticulous I am and that I will photograph and document everything. When I found out about my wife's affair, I was for some reason pulled to this page, and when all the horror stories about things these people's former spouses did to them, and I absolutely refuse to be another one of those stories. I've prepared myself for almost every outcome and accusation she could make. I wouldn't put anything past her at this point. Him had called me once every other day, but I never pick up. If she leaves a voicemail, I don't bother listening to it. I just send it to my lawyer. Every time I send my lawyer something, he always tells me, "You are a lawyer's wet dream. You listen to everything I say. You gathered a mountain of evidence on your own." I have yet to have a client that has done so well. I wasn't exaggerating when I said he says that every time, but it also puts a smile on my face every time. Having that reassurance from him that I'm doing everything right just makes me feel a little bit better about this whole situation. About 2, maybe 3 weeks ago, my lawyer told me that we have enough evidence to bury her outside of court, and if it fails, it would look good on us for trying, so we set a date a week ago to meet in a neutral lawyer's office. Before we met, he told me no matter what, don't react to anything that Morgan might say, and that everything we do say will be recorded for a judge, and we'll read it if it goes to court. We arrived in the early morning and went into the office. To my surprise, she was already there waiting with her lawyer. We walked in and the lawyers started greeting each other. Morgan and I sat there silently waiting for what was going to happen. Morgan's lawyers started by asking what we had to offer. Mine scoffed and said, with the mountain of evidence of the infidelity and Morgan's inappropriate behavior, after the only thing we'll offer is half of the selling price of the home and half of the savings account. That's more than any judge would award you. Basically, what you came into the marriage with you'll be leaving with. Then he looked directly at Morgan and said, if you decide to go to court, I will put every message making you read it all aloud. Then I will put every photo up for all in court to see. Censored, but he didn't save that at the time. And make you describe in detail what you're doing in each photo. Then I'll bring up your recent charges and play the video that was taken that night. Morgan started to tear up looking at me, asking if there was anything she could do to make this right. I said, you've been cheating on me since before our wedding. All I can prove is a few weeks before the wedding, but I expect it was much longer. There's nothing at all you could possibly do to make me forget or forgive you for what you've done. Sign the papers. It's more than you deserve, and I want to be done with this whole sham you created. She cried obnoxiously for 15 minutes, having to excuse herself to the restroom. When she returned, she was still in tears but signed the papers and walked out not long after. So in about a month, everything will be filed, and all I'll have left to do is sell the house. I want to thank you all for reading and all of the advice you've given. Also, shout out to our space, who's currently reading this story and been bringing what's happened to everyone on YouTube. I've read through most of the comments on there, taking the advice from there as well. I don't see anything else happening, but it could be wrong, and if it does, I'll let you know. But this will probably be my last post. So again, thank you all. I hope what's happened to me has helped at least one person out there.